It was just another normal Tuesday morning. I was 16, walking through the hallways of Lincoln High like I did every day. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly above, and the smell of cafeteria food mixed with floor wax hung in the air. Lockers clanged as students rushed to their first classes, and the usual chatter echoed off the walls. I was running a little late, backpack slung over one shoulder, trying not to get caught by the attendance teacher. Everything felt completely ordinary. I stopped for a second near the gym doors to tie my shoe. That's when I noticed something strange. A shadow moved behind the closed gym doors. It was faint, just a dark shape shifting for a second before disappearing again. I assumed it was a janitor or a coach moving some equipment, but something about the way it moved made me pause. It didn't follow the usual pattern of anyone I had seen before. It was too quick, almost deliberate. I shrugged it off and continued walking, but my stomach tightened. There's a part of you that notices when something is slightly off, even when your mind tries to rationalize it. I told myself it was nothing, maybe a bag hanging on the door or a trick of the light, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was there when they shouldn't have been. I started walking faster, keeping my eyes on the lockers rather than the gym. The halls were busy now, but I couldn't stop glancing over my shoulder. Every so often, I thought I caught a glimpse of the same dark shape in the corner of my eye. It vanished whenever I looked directly at it. I tried to focus on reaching my first class, pretending everything was normal, but the uneasy feeling wouldn't leave. By the time I got to my classroom, my heart was already beating faster than usual. I reached for my backpack, trying to pull out my homework, and then I heard it, a faint scraping sound from the hallway. Just a soft, dragging noise, like someone brushing against the lockers as they
passed.
My eyes darted to the door. The hallway looked normal, full of students moving toward their classrooms, but the sound kept repeating, rhythmically, almost like it was following me. I sat down and told myself to calm down. It had to be someone dropping something, maybe a backpack. Still, the sense of being watched lingered in the pit of my stomach. I tried to focus on my notes, but I kept seeing movement in the hallway outside the window, something that didn't belong. A flash of a hoodie, the bend of a figure that didn't match any student I knew. It was supposed to be just another ordinary school day. I didn't think twice about walking into the building, trusting that nothing unusual would happen. But that shadow behind the gym doors, that strange scraping sound, it was the first sign. And even though I didn't know it yet, it was a warning. Something was in the building that shouldn't have been, and it was watching. I didn't see who it was at that moment. I couldn't know yet what it wanted. All I knew was that something was wrong, and for the first time that morning, I felt unsafe in a place I had always considered normal. After the strange shadow in the gym hallway, I tried to shake off the unease. Lincoln High felt normal again as I walked down the main corridor. The smell of cleaning supplies mixed with old textbooks and the faint sound of sneakers squeaking against the polished floor echoed through the halls. Morning sunlight streamed in through the tall windows, giving the lockers a muted shine. Nothing about the school screamed danger. It was exactly how it had always been. It was around 8:30 a.m., and students were moving between classes. Teachers were at their desks, grading papers or talking quietly with students. I had my first period in room 204, which overlooked the football field. From my seat by the window, I could see the empty bleachers in the morning light and the flagpole swaying slightly in the breeze. Everything looked ordinary. I was there because I had detention that day. I had been late too many times the previous week, and my history teacher, Mr. Harris, had finally given up on just warning me. He had a quiet voice, the kind that made you feel guilty for even thinking about skipping. I sat at the corner table, hoping no one would notice me. My backpack rested beside the chair, notebooks open, pencil in hand. The room was quiet except for the soft tapping of fingers on desks and the occasional cough from another student. A few friends passed by the hallway outside the classroom. I waved and they waved back, but I didn't want to get distracted. I was trying to focus on my notes when the faint feeling of being watched returned. It wasn't strong, just a subtle weight at the back of my mind, but it made me glance up at the hallway again. The sunlight created shifting patterns on the linoleum, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw the same dark figure moving past the lockers. When I blinked, it was gone. The The principal's office was across the hall, and I could hear the muffled sound of staff talking about the morning announcements. The intercom occasionally buzzed with the usual reminders. Students, please remember to keep the hallways clear. Or, lunch menu changes today. Pizza in the cafeteria. It all sounded normal, but it felt like a background soundtrack to something I wasn't fully aware of yet. By mid-morning, more students had arrived, and the classroom filled slowly. My teacher, Mr. Harris, walked in quietly. He had a habit of pausing at the door, scanning the room, making sure everyone was where they were supposed to be. He didn't notice anything unusual, and I told myself it was nothing, but that uneasy feeling lingered. The normal chatter of students, the faint hum of fluorescent lights, the distant clanging of lockers, all of it felt comforting in one way and unsettling in another. I was supposed to feel safe. Here. This was the place I came to every day, the place I'd walked through countless times without worry. But now, there was that tiny spark of doubt in my mind, a question that I couldn't shake. What if someone was in the building who wasn't supposed to be? I tried to focus on my notebook, doodling the edges of my page, counting the seconds between each passing footstep outside the classroom. Everything seemed normal. But the school, the hallways, the lights, the teachers, they were just a calm mask over something else. And even then, I didn't realize that mask was about to be torn away. After the strange shadow in the gym hallway, I tried to shake off the unease. Lincoln High felt normal again as I walked down the main corridor. The smell of cleaning supplies mixed with old textbooks and the faint sound of sneakers squeaking against the polished floor echoed through the halls. Morning sunlight streamed in through the tall windows, giving the lockers a muted shine. Nothing about the school screamed danger. It was exactly how it had always been. It was around 8:30 a.m., and students were moving between classes. Teachers were at their desks, grading papers or talking quietly with students. I had my first period in room 204, which overlooked the football field. From my seat by the window, I could see the empty bleachers in the morning light and the flagpole swaying slightly in the breeze. Everything looked ordinary. I was there because I had detention that day. I had been late too many times the previous week, and my history teacher, Mr. Harris, had finally given up on just warning me. He had a quiet voice, the kind that made you feel guilty for even thinking about skipping. I sat at the corner table, hoping no one would notice me. My backpack rested beside the chair, notebooks open, pencil in hand. The room was quiet except for the soft tapping of fingers on desks and the occasional cough from another student. A few friends passed by the hallway outside the classroom. I waved and they waved back, but I didn't want to get distracted. I was trying to focus on my notes when the faint feeling of being watched returned. It wasn't strong, just a subtle weight at the back of my mind, but it made me glance up at the hallway again. The sunlight created shifting patterns on the linoleum, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw the same dark figure moving past the lockers. When I blinked, it was gone. The principal's office was across the hall, and I could hear the muffled sound of staff talking about the morning announcements. The intercom occasionally buzzed with the usual reminders. Students, please remember to keep the hallways clear. Or, lunch menu changes today. Pizza in the cafeteria. It all sounded normal, but it felt like a background soundtrack to something I wasn't fully aware of yet. By mid-morning, more students had arrived, and the classroom filled slowly. My teacher, Mr. Harris, walked in quietly. He had a habit of pausing at the door, scanning the room, making sure everyone was where they were supposed to be. He didn't notice anything unusual, and I told myself it was nothing, but that uneasy feeling lingered. The normal chatter of students, the faint hum of fluorescent lights, the distant clanging of lockers, all of it felt comforting in one way and unsettling in another. I was supposed to feel safe here. This was the place I came to every day, the place I'd walked through countless times without worry. But now, there was that tiny spark of doubt in my mind, a question that I couldn't shake. What if someone was in the building who wasn't supposed to be? I tried to focus on my notebook, doodling the edges of my page, counting the seconds between each passing footstep outside the classroom. Everything seemed normal, but the school, the hallways, the lights, the teachers, they were just a calm mask over something else. And even then, I didn't realize that mask was about to be torn away. By late morning, the school felt quieter than usual. My detention was almost over, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. At first, it was just small things, faint noises I could barely place. A scraping sound from the hallway outside, like metal on tile. At first, I thought it was a janitor moving carts, but the timing didn't match. The sound would start, stop, and start again, irregularly, almost like someone was testing the doors. I kept my eyes on the hallway window, trying to see if anyone was there. Nothing moved, at least nothing I could clearly make out. But the shadows in the corners of the hallway seemed darker than usual. Every so often, I thought I saw a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye, a shadow disappearing when I turned to look. Then there was the smell. Not exactly bad, but sharp, metallic, faint, like someone had been in the hall for a long time. I couldn't place it, and when I looked outside, no one was there. My stomach sank. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Hallways have strange echoes and smells sometimes. A few students passed outside the classroom, but they didn't notice anything. The normal sounds of lockers slamming, distant chatter, sneakers squeaking, these seemed almost louder now, sharper, like they were highlighting the quiet spots in between. And in those quiet spots, I could hear it, a soft, deliberate tapping from the far end of the hall. It wasn't rhythmic like a student walking. It was slow, careful, controlled. I held my breath. I glanced down at my notebook to avoid drawing attention, but my pencil felt heavy in my hand. I tried to focus on a math problem, but I couldn't. The air in the room felt thicker, like someone else was sharing the space with me. I glanced at the corner of the classroom near the window again, and thought I saw the flash of a hooded sleeve moving across the empty hallway. Just a second. Gone before I could fully process it. My skin started to prickle. I wasn't scared, at least not yet, but uneasy, aware. The normal environment of the school, so familiar, was twisting into something unpredictable. Each time I heard a soft scrape or a door creak, I felt my heart rate quicken, even as I forced myself to remain calm. The fluorescent lights above flickered for a moment, casting half the classroom in shadow. The silence between passing footsteps seemed too long. Every small sound, the scraping, the faint breathing I wasn't sure I was imagining, made me look up. I tried to rationalize it, but deep down, I knew something was off. By the time my detention ended, I wasn't ready to leave my seat. That hallway, the empty gym doors, the shadows in the corner, all of it left a pit in my stomach. It was subtle, almost invisible to anyone else. But I knew that feeling, the quiet that says someone is there when they shouldn't be. And in that moment, I realized the school, the place I trusted, wasn't as safe as I thought. Something or someone was moving through it, waiting, watching. And I wasn't ready for what would come next. By the end of first period, the uneasy feeling in my stomach had grown into something heavier. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The hallway outside room 204 felt different now, still bright with sunlight, but somehow oppressive. The shadows near the gym doors stretched longer than usual, and the scraping sounds had returned. This time, they were louder, more deliberate, like someone moving with purpose. I tried to focus on my notebook, but every few seconds, I'd glance up at the hallway. And every time I saw it again. A dark figure, tall, hooded, moving slowly between lockers. Not walking, but gliding, deliberate steps. My pulse quickened. It wasn't a student. Not a teacher. The way it paused, checking each door, made it obvious. It wasn't supposed to be there. I realized I couldn't just sit there. My detention wasn't mandatory anymore. I could leave, but the hallways were crowded enough to make a normal exit risky. Every time someone passed, I froze, hoping the figure wouldn't notice me. The soft scraping continued, following the footsteps of the passing students, but never matching them exactly. Whoever or whatever it was moving carefully, intentionally. I felt trapped. The classroom doors were standard locks, not heavy security locks, and the window to the hall gave me no cover. My backpack sat beside me, useless if I needed to run immediately. I considered calling the office, but my phone was in my locker. I couldn't risk stepping out, not knowing how close the person was. Every creak in the hallway sounded like it was right outside the door. Then I saw it clearly. The figure paused outside a classroom further down the hall. I could make out the hood, the dark jacket, the sense that someone was scanning every door, looking for a specific room. My stomach tightened. I realized it wasn't just moving randomly. It was searching. For what, I didn't know. But I knew I didn't want it to find me. The scraping stopped for a moment, replaced by a faint tap, like fingers brushing against the lockers. Then footsteps again. Faster this time. Closer. I crouched behind my desk, trying to make myself invisible, even though I knew that anyone watching the hall could probably see my shoes peeking from under the desk. My pulse felt loud in my ears. I thought about trying the window, slipping into the hallway, and running to the office. But the closer the figure got, the more I realized it could be anywhere. One turn of the corner, and I'd be face to face with it. The lights flickered above me, and for a second, the hall outside went dark. When the light returned, the figure had shifted closer, moving as silently as a shadow. I couldn't tell if it had noticed me. I tried to remain calm, breathing slowly, telling myself that if I stayed still, it might pass. But deep down, I knew I was running out of time. The figure wasn't just a shadow anymore, it was real. And it was moving closer with every passing second. By mid-morning, the figure was unmistakable. I could see it clearly now, standing at the end of the hallway near the water fountain. The hood hid the face, but the presence was undeniable. It wasn't a student, not a teacher. Whoever it was, it didn't belong there. My chest tightened and my hands shook, but I forced myself to stay calm. I realized I couldn't stay seated in room 204. If it decided to move down this hall, I'd have no chance of getting past it without being seen. I glanced at the window to the corridor, considering slipping out and running for the office, but the hall was partially visible, and the figure was watching. Its movements were deliberate, slow, checking each door like it was searching for something, or someone. I grabbed my backpack, keeping it close to my body, and crouched low. I waited until it moved a few steps away, then edged toward the door. My heart felt like it was going to pound out of my chest. The figure paused, tilted its head, and I froze. For a long second, it felt like it was listening. Then it turned back to the lockers. I took a shaky breath and pushed the door open quietly. The hallway felt impossibly long. I kept to the side, pressed against the wall, trying to stay out of view. Every footstep it made echoed in my ears. I could hear my own breathing, too loud, too fast. My backpack scraped against the floor, and I held my breath as the figure shifted, glancing toward me. For a moment, I thought it had seen me, but then it moved again, disappearing down a side hallway. I ran, fast as quietly as I could. I didn't look back, only focusing on reaching the office. My shoes squeaked on the polished tile, and I prayed the figure wouldn't hear me over the normal noise of the school. I reached the double doors to the office and pulled them open, ducking inside. The secretary looked up, startled. "There's someone in the school," I whispered, breathless. "A man, he's in the hall." She immediately called the principal and 911. I crouched behind the counter, trying to calm my shaking hands. The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder in the hall outside the office. The figure had found a new path, moving deliberately toward the office doors. I pressed myself into the corner, holding my phone in my hand, fingers trembling. The doorknob rattled. Someone tried to push it open. I grabbed a chair and wedged it against the door as hard as I could. The banging grew louder, more forceful. I could feel the tension, the fear, every muscle in my body coiled to escape. Moments felt like hours. Then, sirens blared outside. The figure froze, then disappeared down the hall. The police arrived minutes later, and the office doors were secured. Officers swept the school, but by the time they got to the hallway near room 204, the intruder was gone. I was shaking but alive. I had escaped, but the sense of danger hadn't left. Every hallway, every shadow, every corner in that building felt like it could hide him. After the police secured the office and started sweeping the school, I finally felt a small sense of relief. I thought the worst was over, that the intruder had been caught or at least driven out. But that relief didn't last long. One of the officers called me over, asking me to describe what I had seen. As I recounted the events, the shadow, the careful movements, the footsteps, the officer's face grew serious. "Was there anything else unusual?" he asked, looking at me intently. I paused. I think he was looking for someone. Or maybe something, I said slowly, trying to remember the figure's movements. That's when the officer exchanged a quick glance with another, a look I couldn't interpret. They led me down the hallway toward room 204. The door was open now, the classroom empty. The officer pointed toward the ceiling tiles. "Check these," he said. I tilted my head, confused. Then I noticed something I hadn't before. Several tiles in the hallway ceiling were slightly out of place, just enough that you could see a dark void above. My stomach dropped. "Was he up there?" I whispered. The officer nodded. He was hiding in the ceiling, moving through the vents and the crawl spaces. That's how he avoided everyone. We've seen him do this in other schools, always in the vents, always watching. He's fast, careful, and he knows the building better than anyone would suspect. I felt my knees weaken. I had been walking the halls, sitting in detention, completely unaware that he could have been above me the entire time. Every scrap of sound, every shadow, every faint tap on the floor, I hadn't imagined it. He had been following, watching, waiting for the right moment. Then came the part that hit hardest. The officer pulled something from his pocket, a small notebook, tattered, filled with detailed notes. "We found this in another school he had entered," the officer said quietly. "Maps, schedules, notes about students and staff. He plans his moves carefully. He doesn't just break in, he studies the building, watches, waits." My heart raced. Every hallway I had walked down, every class I had entered, every moment I thought I was alone, he had been there and I hadn't known it. He could have been above me in the ceiling at that very moment, looking down, studying me without my knowledge. The most terrifying realization hit me then. The police confirmed that he had not been caught inside the building that day. He had escaped through a side exit, disappearing into the streets. No one knew where he went, or when he would return. The intruder's identity remained unknown. I couldn't shake the thought that every small noise, every flicker of shadow, wasn't random. It had purpose. He had been there long before anyone noticed, and he could be back. Every time I think about that day, I remember the ceiling tiles, the tapping, the shadow moving just out of reach. The building looked normal. The hallways looked empty. But the truth was simple and terrifying. He had been there, above me, watching, planning, waiting. And the idea that he could do it again in another school, in another hallway, leaves a chill I can't explain. Even after the police left and the school was cleared, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The hallways were empty, quiet, and normal on the surface, but I knew better. I had seen the shadow, felt the presence, heard the deliberate taps and scraping that meant he had been there. He wasn't just an intruder. He was someone who studied, waited, and moved through spaces like they were his own. Weeks passed, and the school returned to routine. Classes resumed, students laughed, lockers clanged, and teachers moved between rooms as if nothing had happened. I walked the halls, trying to focus on homework, friends, and normal life. But every corner, every stretch of hallway, every ceiling tile reminded me of that day. I couldn't ignore the thought that he could be back. He hadn't been caught inside, and he was fast, careful, and clever. Sometimes, when I'm alone in the school, I hear it again, the faint scrape of metal on tile, the soft tap of footsteps somewhere above or behind. My brain tells me it's nothing, just echoes, just imagination. But my gut doesn't lie. I remember the way he moved, the way he watched, the way he studied the building long before anyone noticed. That thought stays with me. I started paying attention to small things I had ignored before. Flickering lights, empty hallways, doors that seemed to close too slowly. I noticed shadows that don't belong, corners that seem darker than they should, and even in a crowded classroom, I sometimes feel the weight of eyes on me. Not my friends, not my teachers, but someone else's. Someone I can't see. I told myself I was overreacting, that schools are just noisy, old buildings. But then there's a sound I can't explain, a floorboard creaking in the middle of the day, a locker rattling without a student nearby. And I freeze, thinking about the figure in the hood, the one who could move through vents, crawl spaces, and empty hallways without being noticed. The police never found him. They never identified him. Every report said he was gone, vanished into the city, like he had never been there. But I know better. I felt him watching me. I heard him moving. I know he exists somewhere planning his next move. Sometimes I wonder if he's still in the building. Maybe he's waiting above the ceiling tiles, somewhere I can't see. Maybe he's learned the patterns of every student, every teacher, every footstep that passes through these halls. And maybe one day he'll return. Every time I walk through the halls, I feel the chill of being watched. I glance at every shadow, every flicker of movement, every empty doorway. I know I can't unsee what I saw. I know that day changed the way I move through normal places forever. And the scariest part? I don't know who he is. I don't know where he is. And I have no idea if I'll see him again. But I do know one thing. Sometimes, when the school is quiet and the lights flicker, I feel him. Watching. Waiting. Still there. The building looks normal. But I know it isn't. And the thought that he could be back, anywhere, at any time, that is what keeps me awake at night.